Literary canons are often presented as pristine, isolated achievements, the linear output of a singular local genius. The medieval history of the Bengal Delta completely contradicts this, showing a landscape defined by constant, multifaceted exchange. Bengali literature emerged as an interconnected system, a dynamic cultural ecology. This ecology is an interdependent network governed by three active variables: shifting political power, the flow of trans-regional languages, and the distribution of religious patronage. In the 8th century, this network was dominated by the elite framework of the Sanskrit cosmopolis. When that imperial structure collapsed, it triggered a massive vernacular turn, elevating Proto-Bengali from a spoken dialect into a written force. Mapping this specific ecology reveals the mechanics that allow a marginalized dialect to eventually displace an imperial language. The foundation of Bengal's early literary network was laid by the Pāla Empire, which ruled from the 8th through the 12th centuries. During this period, the ultimate lingua franca was Sanskrit, connecting intellectuals across the entire subcontinent. The Pāla emperors deployed Sanskrit as a symbol of imperial legitimacy, using it to facilitate communication exclusively among the elite. The production of this elite literature was concentrated in massive institutional hubs, like the great Buddhist monastery at Nalanda. Monks and scholars in these centers focused on rigorous doctrinal exegesis, composing philosophical treatises and commentaries. Outside the monasteries, Sanskrit also dominated the royal courts. Here, the focus shifted to performative panegyrics, highly stylized poetry designed to broadcast political ideology. Beneath this dominant, rigid Sanskrit umbrella flowed a hidden, vibrant linguistic undercurrent, the marginalized spoken dialects known as Apabhramsha. These dialects operated orally, transmitting songs and local myths among the agrarian population without a codified script. This divide allowed the Pāla state to operate as a high-culture monopoly, separating the administration of the empire from the oral traditions of the world population. By the late 12th century, the centralized Pāla hierarchy collapsed, fracturing the region into smaller, autonomous polities. This fragmentation dissolved the infrastructure that had maintained Sanskrit's monopoly, leaving vacated spaces in the cultural hierarchy. The rulers of these newly independent territories faced an immediate challenge: establishing legitimacy without imperial backing. To build local loyalty, they began financially sponsoring the regional language, deliberately elevating Proto-Bengali from the fields to the courts. This patronage triggered an epistemic transition across the 13th and 14th centuries. The language moved from fluid oral folklore into a fixed written manuscript culture. By recording these dialects in ink, scribes codified the vocabulary and syntax, stabilizing Proto-Bengali into a universally recognized literary medium. Regional chieftains capitalized on this, embedding political histories and local hero narratives directly into familiar texts. Writing the vernacular served as a calculated transfer of political power to regional identities. This literary evolution reached its peak under the Bengal Sultanate between the 14th and 16th centuries. During the reign of Hussein Shah, the Sultanate developed a multicultural patronage structure. The court operated as a pluralistic ecology where Muslim rulers and Hindu land-holding elites actively collaborated to sponsor literary production. Simultaneously, the Sultanate integrated Persian as the official language of administration and high courtly culture. This brought distinct Persian aesthetic frameworks into Bengal, introducing narrative forms like the ghazal and the masnavi into the regional ecosystem. The result of this multi-ethnic patronage was a hybrid output known as the Dobhāṣī tradition. Dobhāṣī texts blended Persian vocabulary and imagery into the structural syntax of Bengali. This hybridity contradicts the assumption that regional literatures develop in isolated silos. The Sultanate environment demonstrates that for a vernacular language to expand, it requires the inclusion and absorption of foreign aesthetics. By destroying linguistic silos, the Sultanate period proved that literary canons are built through trans-regional hybridization. While the Sultanate courts engineered a high culture synthesis, a parallel shift was happening in the broader public sphere. This shift coincided with the rise of the Bhakti movement, which moved religious practice from the monastery to the village square. Pioneering poets like Vidyapati shaped a new devotional ethos, prioritizing personal connection over rigid ritual. The primary vehicles for this movement were the Pada and the Gita, compact, deeply emotional poetic forms. These were designed as musical, performative literature, meant to be sung aloud by massive participatory crowds. They centered on the theological concept of madhurya rasa, or the aesthetic of emotional sweetness. Bhakti poetry powerfully used romantic longing and intense, raw vulnerability as direct metaphors for the soul's quest for spiritual union. This mysticism democratized religious access, allowing the public to experience the divine directly, bypassing Sanskrit scholasticism. Through communal performance, Bhakti literature radically transformed the vernacular from a functional administrative tool into a deeply embedded cultural identity. From the rigid Sanskrit hierarchy of the 8th century to the multi-layered Sultanate of the 16th century, Bengali literature was shaped by continuous systemic pressure. Literary canons are never monolithic creations of a single ethnicity, nor are they bound by isolated geography. Through political fragmentation and localized patronage, Bengali transformed from an uncodified oral dialect into a robust cosmopolitan medium. Ultimately, this single vernacular medium carried elite philosophy, Persianate courtly aesthetics, and democratized Bhakti theology simultaneously. The study of vernacular literature traces a living ecology of human adaptation and survival.